Buckingham Palace has said King Charles spent a short period of time in hospital today after experiencing the temporary side effects.
At 75, King Charles finally reveals what many suspected after months of silence and concern. Was it tension in his marriage or serious health issues that caused his long absence? The truth now changes everything people thought they knew. What really happened behind closed doors? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the confession. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. The first signs did not come during a grand event. They appeared quietly, in moments that many almost ignored. During a simple public appearance, King Charles III stepped out to greet the crowd, as he had done many times before. The setting was calm, the expectations were clear, and everything seemed normal at first. Yet, as people watched more closely, something about him felt different. He moved slower than usual, not dramatically, but enough to be noticed. His steps were careful, almost measured, as if he was trying to manage his strength. When he waved, the gesture felt lighter, less energetic than before. It was a small change, but it stood out because of how consistent he had always been. For a man known for steady presence, even the smallest shift carried meaning. His face told an even deeper story. He smiled at the crowd, just as expected, but the smile did not last. It appeared quickly and faded just as fast. There was no warmth behind it, no sense of ease. His eyes looked tired, carrying a quiet weight that did not match the simple nature of the outing. It was not the look of a man enjoying the moment. It was the look of someone pushing through it. As he continued, there were brief pauses that felt unusual. At certain points, he seemed to lose focus, even if only for a second. His attention drifted, then returned, but the change was clear enough to create concern. These were not mistakes, but they were not normal either. They suggested something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. His posture also shifted in ways that raised questions. At times, he stood upright and composed, maintaining the image expected of him. Then, without warning, his shoulders dropped slightly and his stance softened. It was as if the effort to remain strong came and went in quiet waves. These changes were subtle, yet they happened often enough to be noticed. Those watching began to feel it too. The atmosphere, though calm, carried a strange tension. Nothing was openly wrong, yet something felt out of place. People exchanged looks, quietly trying to understand what they were seeing. There was no official explanation, no clear reason, only a growing sense that something was being hidden. Behind the scenes, the silence made everything stronger. No one spoke, no one confirmed anything, and that absence of answers only deepened the mystery. The king continued his duties, appearing when needed, but the difference in his presence became harder to ignore. Each appearance added another layer to the questions forming in people's minds. When the moment passed, it did not fade away. Instead, it stayed with those who had noticed the change. Was it simply age, or was there something more serious behind it? The absences no one could explain. After the first quiet signs, a new and steady pattern began to form around King Charles III. At the start, everything still looked normal from the outside. His calendar was full, his duties were planned ahead, and the expectations of his role remained the same. But slowly, without loud announcement or clear explanation, changes began to appear in how those plans were handled. Events that had already been confirmed started to shift. Some were moved to different dates, while others were quietly removed from the schedule entirely. These were not minor engagements or optional visits. They were important royal duties that usually required his presence. Yet one after another, they were no longer attended by him. The changes did not come with a strong explanation. They simply appeared and then became reality. At first, many people assumed it was a normal adjustment. Large schedules often change, and plans sometimes move due to timing or travel needs. The palace also released simple statements that suggested nothing unusual was happening. They spoke of rescheduling, adjustments, and updates. On the surface, everything sounded calm and routine. There was no alarm, no urgency, and no clear reason to worry. But as time passed, the number of changes began to grow. It was no longer a rare adjustment here and there. It was happening again and again. Those who followed royal duties closely started to notice the repetition. Each time a new event was announced, there was always a chance it might change later. This growing pattern made people pause and start paying closer attention. Soon, the absences became more visible. There were important gatherings where his place was empty. Meetings that would normally include him continued without his presence. In those moments, other members of the royal family stepped forward to fill the space. They carried out their duties carefully and respectfully, but something important was missing. The atmosphere felt different without him there. The absence was not only physical, it also changed the feeling of each occasion. When a central figure is missing, even a well-organized event feels incomplete. People notice that difference. It was not something openly spoken about, but it was felt. The structure of the royal duties continued, but the center of it seemed less stable than before. What made the situation more difficult to understand was the lack of clear explanation. The statements that came from official sources were careful and limited. They gave just enough information to acknowledge change, but not enough to explain it fully. There were no direct answers. There was no confirmation of what was happening behind the scenes. This silence created more questions than comfort. In situations like this, silence often becomes louder than words. The more people tried to understand, the more they noticed what was not being said. The absence of detail made the situation feel heavier. When answers are missing, people begin to fill in the gaps with their own thoughts. And in this case, those thoughts naturally turn toward concern. Behind all of this, a quiet sense of worry began to grow. The king had always been known for his steady approach to duty. His role required consistency, presence, and commitment. Missing important responsibilities did not match the image people were used to seeing. This difference made observers wonder if something more serious was happening behind closed doors. The timing of the changes also added to the uncertainty. The adjustments did not appear randomly. They came after earlier moments that already seemed unusual. This made everything feel connected, as if each change was part of a larger and hidden picture. It no longer felt like separate decisions. It felt like one continuous situation, unfolding slowly over time. As more events passed without his attendance, the questions only grew stronger. People began to wonder if this was temporary or something more lasting. The royal family continued to appear composed in public, maintaining calm expressions and steady routines. But their silence on the matter created a strong contrast. The more composed they looked, the more people questioned what was happening behind that calm surface. The absence of clear answers became the center of attention. It was no longer just about missed events. It was about why they were being missed and what that meant for the future. Was this only a temporary step back that would soon end? Or was it the beginning of something far more serious that had not yet been fully revealed? The night, the ambulance was seen. The quiet tension that had been building suddenly found a moment that no one could ignore. Late one evening, when the world had settled into calm, something unusual happened near a royal residence linked to King Charles III. The area was known for strict privacy, where every movement was controlled and carefully managed. Yet, on that night, a single event broke through that silence and left behind more questions than answers. An ambulance was seen leaving the residence under heavy security. It was not part of any public plan, and there had been no notice of medical activity earlier that day. The vehicle moved quickly but carefully, surrounded by protection that made it clear something serious might be happening. It was not the presence of the ambulance alone that raised concern. It was the secrecy that followed it. There were no official words from the palace. No statement was released to explain what had happened or who was involved. The usual process of informing the public was completely absent. This silence felt different from before. It was deeper, more deliberate, and far more noticeable. When something serious happens, people expect clarity. This time, there was nothing but quiet. As the sighting began to spread, attention grew rapidly. Those who had already noticed changes in the king's appearances now connected this moment to everything they had seen before. The slow movements, the missed events, the distant expressions all seemed to lead back to this night. It no longer felt like separate incidents. It felt like pieces of one hidden story coming together. The timing made everything more intense. This incident happened during the same period when questions were already forming about his health and presence. It did not feel like a random event. Instead, it seemed linked to the quiet changes that had been unfolding over time. People began to wonder if this was the moment when something serious had finally reached a critical point behind closed doors. The security around the scene added another layer to the mystery. Every detail suggested that whatever was happening needed to remain hidden. Movements were controlled, access was limited, and information was tightly guarded. This level of caution only increased concern. When so much effort is placed on silence, it often means the truth carries weight. The lack of denial also stood out. The palace did not reject the reports, but it did not confirm them either. This careful balance created even more uncertainty. Without clear answers, people were left to form their own thoughts. Each possibility felt more serious than the last. Was the king involved, or was it someone else within the royal circle? The question remained open, with no guidance to settle it. As the night passed, the image of that ambulance stayed in people's minds. It became a symbol of everything that had been hidden so far. The quiet signs, the missed appearances, and now this sudden moment all pointed in the same direction. Something important was happening, and it was being kept away from public view. If this moment was only part of a larger truth, what else had been hidden? A marriage under pressure. As the changes around King Charles III became harder to ignore, attention slowly turned toward his relationship with Queen Camilla. They continued to appear together in public, standing side by side as expected. But something about their connection felt different. It was not a clear break or open tension. It was softer than that, almost hidden, yet strong enough for people to notice. During their appearances, their movements seemed careful and controlled. They followed the same steps, greeted the same crowds, and fulfilled their duties without mistake. Still, there was a lack of ease between them. The small moments that usually showed closeness were missing. Their smiles did not always meet at the same time. Their eyes rarely held each other for long. These details were quiet, but they carried meaning. People who watched closely began to study every interaction. Each glance, each step, and each pause became important. The way they stood near each other felt more formal than warm. It was as if they were focusing on doing everything right rather than simply being together. This shift did not go unnoticed, especially during a time when so many other changes were already raising concern. As the king continued to withdraw from certain duties, the queen remained steady in her role. She carried out her responsibilities with calm focus, stepping forward when needed. This balance created a visible difference between them. While she maintained a consistent presence, he appeared less often and with less energy. The contrast added to the growing questions about what was happening behind the scenes. There were moments when their connection seemed to return, even if only briefly. A shared look, a small gesture, or a quiet exchange would appear, giving a glimpse of unity. Yet those moments were short. They passed quickly, leaving behind the same sense of distance. It was enough to make people wonder if they were holding something together, under pressure, rather than moving freely as a pair. The idea of strain began to take shape. A hidden struggle can affect more than one person, especially within a close relationship. If something serious was affecting the king, it could naturally place weight on their bond. This possibility felt real to those observing from the outside. The changes in their connection seemed to match the changes in his presence, creating a pattern that was difficult to ignore. At the same time, there was no open sign of conflict, no visible disagreement, no clear moment of tension. Everything remained calm and controlled. This made the situation even more complex. It was not a story of visible trouble, but one of quiet distance, the kind that grows slowly, without clear explanation, leaving people to search for meaning in small details. The public continued to watch, hoping for clarity. Each new appearance became another chance to understand what was happening. Would their connection return to its usual warmth, or would the distance remain? The answers did not come easily. Instead, the same pattern continued, deepening the sense that something important was being managed behind closed doors. As the days passed, one question stayed at the center of it all. Was this distance simply a reflection of private struggles, or was it a sign of something deeper that had not yet been revealed? The royal family's silence. As concern continued to rise around King Charles III, one thing became impossible to ignore. The royal family was not speaking openly. There were no clear updates, no direct explanations, and no simple answers that could calm public curiosity. Everything on the surface remained controlled and composed, but beneath that calm appearance, the silence felt heavier with each passing day. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind that made people focus even more, trying to read meaning into every small detail. Public life continued as expected, but something about it had clearly shifted. Events still took place, and duties were still carried out. But the balance within the royal family no longer looked the same. Prince William began to appear more frequently in important roles. He attended key engagements, met leaders, and represented the institution in moments that carried significant weight. His presence felt steady and responsible, and while nothing was officially declared, the pattern was easy to notice. What made this shift more striking was the lack of explanation behind it. There was no formal announcement stating why his responsibilities seemed to increase. No statement clarified whether this was temporary or part of a planned adjustment. Still, the changes were visible to anyone paying attention. He was increasingly present at moments where the king was absent. He was speaking in spaces where silence had taken over. Without saying it directly, the structure of duties appeared to be adjusting in real time. This quiet change created a sense of unspoken preparation. It did not feel rushed or chaotic. Instead, it felt careful and measured, as if every step was being taken with great caution. The idea that someone was slowly stepping into a larger role without public emphasis added to the feeling that something important was happening behind closed doors. At the same time, Prince Harry remained physically and publicly distant from the rest of the royal family. His absence added another layer to the growing tension. While others increased their presence and responsibilities, he remained separate from the unfolding situation. This separation was not explained in detail, but it was visible enough to become part of the wider conversation surrounding the family. The contrast between those who were present and those who were not became a major point of attention. On one side, there was consistent public duty, careful appearances, and steady engagement. On the other side, there was distance and silence. These two positions created a sharp divide in how the situation was being viewed from the outside. It was no longer only about the king's condition or schedule. It was also about the structure of the family itself and how each member was responding to the situation in their own way. Within all of this, the royal family as a whole maintained strict control over their public image. Every appearance was measured, every expression carefully managed, and every word chosen with caution. No one stepped beyond what was expected. No one revealed more than what was necessary. This level of control made the situation even more noticeable. When everything appears too composed, it often draws more attention than chaos would. This consistent silence began to take on meaning of its own. Without clear answers, people started to interpret the absence of information as information itself. The lack of detail did not reduce concern. Instead, it increased it. The silence felt like a deliberate space where something important was being protected, guarded from public view until the right moment. As time continued, that silence did not break. It held its shape even as attention grew stronger and more focused. Every public appearance became more closely examined. Every absence felt more significant than before. Even small details began to carry weight, as people searched for clues within carefully controlled moments. The royal family was still functioning, but the feeling around it had changed completely. The situation eventually reached a point where the silence itself became the central focus. It was no longer just about health, duty, or absence. It was about the decision to remain quiet despite growing public attention. That decision created its own tension because it left room for imagination, concern, and speculation to grow without limits. The rumors turned dark. The quiet whispers that once stayed in the background around King Charles III slowly began to change in tone and strength. At first, they were small and easy to ignore, the kind of talk that usually fades with time. People would mention small changes, brief absences, or moments that did not seem fully explained. But as days passed, those soft whispers did not disappear. Now, instead, they grew stronger, spreading into wider conversations where more people began to listen closely. What had once felt like casual speculation started to turn into something heavier. It was no longer just about a missed appearance here or a slight change in schedule there. It became a growing feeling that something serious might be unfolding behind closed doors. The more people tried to understand, the more questions seemed to appear, and with each new question, the silence around the situation felt even louder. Reports began to surface, slowly at first, then more frequently. They did not come with full confirmation or detailed explanation, but they carried enough weight to make people pay attention. Mentions of hospital visits began to appear in discussions, always carefully phrased and never fully confirmed. There was no clear official statement that fully explained them, but there was also no strong rejection that could completely close the matter. This space between clarity and silence created even more uncertainty. As time went on, the idea of medical attention began to appear more often in these conversations. The words used were careful, but they pointed toward urgency. People spoke indirectly about consultations that could not be delayed and situations that required immediate care. Nothing was openly stated in full detail, yet the message behind the words felt serious. It created an image of something important happening quietly, away from public view. With each passing report, the tone of public discussion began to shift. What started as curiosity slowly turned into concern. It was no longer just about wondering what was happening. It became about the possibility that something significant was being handled behind the scenes. Even without full confirmation, the feeling of seriousness continued to grow stronger. As these ideas spread, attention naturally turned back to earlier moments. People began to look again at the pattern of changes that had taken place over time. The missed duties, the sudden adjustments to public schedules, and the quiet absence from important events now appeared differently. What once seemed like separate incidents started to look connected. Each moment seemed to point toward a larger situation that had not yet been fully understood. Even earlier, unusual signs began to take on new meaning. There had been moments that did not fully make sense at the time, such as sudden changes in appearance or unexpected gaps in public presence. Now, those moments were no longer viewed in isolation. They were being placed together, forming a pattern that people could not easily ignore. The idea that there might have been deeper knowledge within the royal circle before the public became aware started to grow stronger. This possibility added another layer of tension to the situation. If important details were known earlier, it could explain the careful way everything was handled. It would also explain why communication remained limited and why updates were so controlled. The sense that time was being carefully managed behind the scenes became more believable as more pieces of the story were reconsidered. Despite the growing speculation, the royal family continued to appear composed in public. Their movements remained steady, their appearances carefully managed, and their communication minimal. However, this calm exterior did not reduce public interest. In fact, it made it stronger. The more controlled everything appeared, the more people believed that something important was being carefully protected from public view. As this continued, the gap between what was visible and what was known grew wider. People could see changes happening, but they could not fully understand their cause. This distance created frustration, curiosity, and anticipation all at once. Each new day without clear explanation added another layer of uncertainty. It felt as though everything was moving toward a point where silence would no longer be enough. The situation began to feel like a story, building toward a reveal that could not be delayed forever. Every quiet update, every carefully worded statement, and every missing detail added pressure to the growing sense that the truth was getting closer to the surface. People waited for clarity, but it did not come. In the middle of all this, one question became more important than the rest. Was the truth being held back because the timing needed to be right, or because it was too sensitive to be shared earlier? The confession. At 75. The long silence that had surrounded King Charles III finally came to an end in a way that no one could ignore. At the age of 75, he chose to share the truth that had been hidden behind careful words, controlled appearances, and quiet uncertainty for a long time. It was not a slow reveal or a gradual explanation. It was direct, clear, and life-changing in its meaning. The moment it was said, everything that people had been guessing about suddenly found its place. The truth was simple, but it carried a heavy weight. He had cancer. There were no extra details meant to soften the message, no long explanations to reduce its impact. It stood on its own, strong and undeniable. In that single moment, the questions that had built up over time began to settle into answers. What once felt confusing now started to make sense in a way that was difficult to ignore. Looking back, many of the earlier signs now formed a clear pattern. The missed appearances, the sudden changes in schedule, and the quiet absences that once raised concern were no longer separate mysteries. They became part of one continuous story. Each moment that had seemed unusual now pointed in the same direction. It was no longer a series of random changes. It was a journey that had been unfolding quietly behind closed doors. People began to remember the times he stepped back from public duties. At the time, those moments had created questions. Now they carry a new meaning, even small details, like moments when he appeared visibly tired or less present than usual, were no longer overlooked. They became pieces of a larger picture that had been hidden in plain sight. The careful silence from those around him also took on a new meaning. What once felt like a lack of explanation now appeared different. The absence of detail was no longer seen only as avoidance. It was understood as protection of something deeply personal. Every quiet update and every carefully chosen word now seemed to carry more weight than anyone realized at the time. Earlier events that had caused speculation also came back into focus. There had been reports and sightings that people struggled to understand then. Now they fit into the story with clearer meaning. The quiet medical movements, the sudden changes behind closed doors, and the controlled flow of information all aligned with what was finally revealed. It became clear that this was not something that had started suddenly. It had been present for some time, managed carefully while public life continued as normally as possible. The reaction to the announcement spread quickly and deeply. People who had followed his public life closely now saw everything through a different lens. Moments that once felt uncertain now felt connected. The royal family's silence, which had once created frustration and speculation, now felt different in tone. It was no longer seen only as secrecy. It also appeared as a shield around something very personal and serious. As people reflected on earlier times, even public celebrations and formal duties began to feel different. Events that were once viewed as simple appearances now seemed part of a larger effort to maintain stability. Behind every smile and every public duty, there now appeared to be a hidden effort to balance responsibility with private struggle. The contrast between public strength and private difficulty became impossible to ignore. This new understanding also brought attention to those closest to him. Every decision made during that time now felt more complex. Each appearance was no longer just a public duty. Each absence was no longer just a schedule change. Every moment carried a quiet weight that was not visible at the time. Those around him had to move carefully, balancing public expectation with private reality. Even with the truth finally revealed, the story did not feel completely closed. The announcement answered the biggest question, but it also opened deeper reflections. People began to think about how long the truth had been known before it was shared. They wondered about the timing and whether earlier understanding could have changed the way events unfolded in the public eye. The silence that once surrounded everything now felt different in hindsight. It was no longer just emptiness. It was a space filled with meaning that only became clear after the truth was spoken. It raised difficult thoughts about what people see and what remains hidden, especially when public duty and private life overlap in such a powerful way.